So I'm very happy to welcome Katie Anderson next. Katie and I know each other for many years, but we have never met. So Katie, welcome to First KATA. Super. So Katie is a leadership coach, consultant, and she's been a lifelong learner, especially about leadership and Toyota. And as you know, probably hopefully know, she's wrote a bestseller, Learning to Lead, Leading to Learn. And she worked a lot and practiced with Mr. Yoshino. And I hope she's going to share some very cool stories. And with that, Katie, over to you. Dive in and tell us where everything began.
It's actually my first KATA. It's always been at a time when my kids had a break. So thank you, Jim and team, for inviting me here today. Now, we just had our break and want to have an opportunity to do a sort of litmus test of who's in the room. So we're going to stand up based on your assessment of your personal level of experience with coaching others for improvement on a scale of 1, just getting started, to 4, with some experience, and 7, much experience. Doesn't mean you're not still learning, but much experience. So I'm going to start counting off the numbers and just stand up and stay standing based on your self-assessment. So 1, just getting started or a newbie. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Tilo, you better stand up. I'll put you over there. Great. Well, this gives us a nice visual representation of, you can sit down, thank you, of where everyone is at on their learning journey. And it is a spectrum. And this talk is for all of you, no matter where you are on your learning journey, because we're going to get back to the basics about the beginning of where the practice of what we call Toyota Kata started, and the fundamentals that are helpful for us no matter what level we are in our learning journey. We are here today at KATACon 8 because we have a shared purpose. We are all interested in accelerating the rate of learning in our organizations, accelerating change. And I propose, too, and some of you may have heard this from Mike and others, that we start adopting a new definition of KATAlyst from an event or person that accelerates the rate of change, or someone or something who encourages progress or change. But for those of us who are leaders and continuous improvement practitioners, how can we be KATAlysts, an event or person that accelerates the rate of scientific thinking and improvement, or someone or something that encourages learning as a source of progress or change? So use this hashtag KATAlyst and start thinking of yourself as KATAlysts in your organizations, no matter what level you are at in your practice. This gets back to the concept of intention. And some of you know intention is a really important and meaningful word in my life. It's something that I got a deeper perspective on in the time that I lived in Japan. For those of you who don't know, I had this incredible opportunity as a lean practitioner and consultant to move to Tokyo with my husband and my children for my husband's job for 18 months at the beginning of 2015 to 16. And I had business cards made. I didn't have a logo for my business at the time, and so had them put the word intention on the card. Well, the meaning or the characters in kanji script for intention come from the symbols representing heart and direction. So if we can think of intention as about who do we want to be, our heart, what's important inside of us, our purpose, and then how do we align our actions in that direction? And not just align the actions, take the action so that we can have the impact that we want. However, in working with tens of thousands of leaders around the world in the last 20 years, and even in my own practice, I've discovered that the biggest barrier to having the impact that we want isn't around our sense of purpose. We have that shared purpose, but it's how are we aligning and taking the right actions to align with that purpose and have the impact that we want. So we'll hold that concept with you here today because it's about developing those habits. And that's what Kata is. It's the routines that we can take to develop the habits that are aligned with our purpose. So if our purpose is about developing problem solvers at all levels in our organization, about accelerating learning, what are the actions we need to take to do that? So I'm going to take us back in time. Thilo mentioned my book, Learning to Lead, Leading to Learn, lessons from Toyota leader Esau Yoshino on a lifetime of continuous learning. I had the incredible opportunity to take what I thought was a once-in-a-lifetime experience of meeting Mr. Yoshino in Japan to it becoming one of the most important and meaningful adult relationships in my life. But I want to unwind from that and show this picture here of Mr. Yoshino back at the Lean Coaching Summit in 2014, hosted by Lean Frontiers and LEI. And John Shook and Mr. Yoshino took the stage. For those of you who don't know, John Shook was the first non-Japanese employee of Toyota Motor Corporation. And he has amplified our knowledge of what Toyota's practices are, A3 thinking, and so much more in the West. Well, who was his boss? Esau Yoshino. And the book Managing to Learn is actually based on their relationship as manager and learner. This is the foundation of leader as coach and of problem-solving thinking. And this is at the conference where I met Mr. Yoshino. He gave me his card, and then that was the beginning of a beautiful friendship when I moved to Japan 6 months later. But before that, Mr. Yoshino was on stage, and he made a comment about his role as a manager. And he said, my aim, or my role, was to develop John, or whomever was reporting to him, by giving him a mission or target and supporting him while he figured out how to reach that target. And then he said something else that struck me as very profound. As I was developing John, I was aware I was developing myself as well. And so it's this mindset that we're always continual learners. We're not the experts. We have opportunities to learn and grow. And this is exactly the basis of what Mike has described as the Toyota Kata. This is the pattern, setting the direction, providing support, and developing ourselves at the same time. And this is the basis for so many of the tools and the structures that have come out of Toyota as well, from A3 thinking to Hoshin Conrier strategy deployment, to our concepts of PDSA, or as I like to say, study, adjust, plan, do, to remind us that reflection's the beginning, not the end of learning, and also of the Toyota Kata. These are the routines and practices about solving problems and developing people to solve problems. It's routines and practices. This is how we are KATAlysts in our organization. Out of this comment that Mr. Yoshino made at this conference, it really struck me as so simple and profound about a leader's purpose: to set the direction, provide support, and develop ourselves. And I want to talk about each of those a little bit here. I encourage you, if you want to dive more into this, to come to my session tomorrow. We're having time to really go and explore this in more detail. And I call this is how we lead to learn. A leader's purpose first is to set the direction. And we know this in the Toyota Kata. It's that challenge, right? So we need to have a direction, a challenge, or target. And what's really important here? Based on what is needed, not just what is achievable. Because it's what we learn from not reaching our target or our goal that makes us smarter. And so we have to have a culture and environment that allows that. And that's so much of this practice that you just saw on stage by the Kata Girl Geeks here, talking about how do we have a direction or target, and even if we're failing, what are we learning? This is about the direction and the target. Yet often we don't know what the target or the direction is. And this is one of the most important steps that we need to take in any kind of problem solving. If we don't know where we're supposed to go or what the target is, how can we create a gap? Because there's a simple equation. A problem really is target minus actual. It's the gap. What are we going to solve? And so if you're a leader, think about how clear are people about what direction you are setting for the organization. Do they know the target? And if not, what do you need to do to provide that? And if you are a learner or someone who has responsibility for solving a problem, but you don't know what direction is, what steps can you take to understand that as your first step? The second part of a leader's purpose is to provide support. And there is so much that goes into providing support. The simplest way I can describe this is about creating the conditions for learning. It's about providing that challenge and then the support by asking questions, by teaching, by instructing, by helping someone move forward. and having enough challenge that they're stretched, that they don't necessarily know how to get there, but enough support they don't feel like the bottom's falling out as well. And this is where that learning zone happens. And this is also the threshold of knowledge. So how do we move through this? But moving through this is uncomfortable, and there's inherent struggle that happens when we don't know an answer or we're learning something new. As coaches and as leaders, we need to get comfortable with the struggle and allowing people that space to learn and to fail, because we feel uncomfortable, so we start jumping in on our old habits of wanting to give the answer or telling a little bit more. But how can we hold back a little bit? How do we ask some more questions, still providing that support and that caring so someone doesn't feel like they're alone, but giving them the space to learn and grow, and recognize that we too, as we're learning to be coaches, there's struggle for us in that moment as well. It feels uncomfortable. People often ask me, well, how can I ask more questions? People expect me to give the answer. It feels really uncomfortable. Explain the purpose of why you're asking those questions. Explain that you're feeling a little uncomfortable, because this models the way that it's okay to struggle and to be learning at the same time. And so the third part this leads us to is we have to develop ourselves, move through that struggle for ourselves as well. And this is really about navigating these leadership continuums. It's not just telling or asking. There's actually a place in there for teaching, for instruction, for walking side by side as well. It's about knowing when you should be telling, such as setting the direction, when you should be asking, and if someone's really stuck, where you should be teaching as well. It's not just being an expert or a coach. How can you own your content expertise that you have developed over years? You've been promoted for this for a reason. And it's about applying that when you have ownership for a problem. At the same time, how are you helping other people develop their expertise as well? And so we have to know, when are we there to solve the problem? When are we there to allow space and opportunity for others? It's about providing not just the challenge or support, but how do you do both and at the right level so we can create that learning zone. And it's not just about business outcomes or the goal or the challenge that we need to reach or people development. It's how can we do both at the same time. So we need to move from this concept of either or to and. And it's about navigating this continuum in between, really in that situational leadership there. I mentioned my book, Learning to Lead, Leading to Learn. There's so much richness in there about the history of Toyota, about starting from the 1960s to the 2000s, about how one leader learned to lead and then led to learn. And this is really the concept of what we are trying to do through the practice of the Toyota Kata. When I first met Mr. Yoshino, as I actually made my husband take the day off of work, I seriously thought it was going to be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And we took the Shinkansen, the bullet train. It's 90 minutes from Tokyo to Nagoya. It's incredible. If you ever have an opportunity to go to Japan, it's really just an incredible experience. And I started asking Mr. Yoshino some questions then and then on subsequent visits. What is the secret to Toyota? And the same reason Mike went in, like, why are all these people wanting to copy Toyota? What is the secret? We have these tools, these structures, these things aren't necessarily sticking. And he kept saying, there is no secret, there is no secret. And one day he said, the only secret to Toyota is its attitude towards learning. He expanded and said, we don't even notice and we take it for granted. And that's so true. If you asked Mr. Yoshino to describe the Toyota Kata, he wouldn't know what you're talking about. He would look confused, because this is a practice that helps us learn something that is ingrained in how they develop people, and it's a tool that helps us. But it's not the only tool, and it's a practice. Again, some people have come on my Japan study trips before the pandemic and said, well, we're going to see Toyota Kata storyboards up at the companies we're visiting. No, you will not. Because this is a tool that's helping us learn the routines of scientific thinking, the patterns. You may see other tools, other structures. That's okay, because it is not about the tool. It's about the pattern of behavior and the thinking. What's the target? What's actually happening? How are we learning? What's the gap? Please explain your thinking. What next step are you going to take? And doing that over and over, the challenge and support. Yesterday at the Kata Geek meetup, I heard a lot about talking about the characteristics of what it means to be a coach or a learner and what we're trying to do through the whole Toyota Kata. And it reminded me of what I call the 7 C's of leadership. It's when we lead with an attitude of caring about people first. We don't just go to Gemba, to the place the work happens, to understand about a process. We go to show that we care about the people doing the work. This is why we're establishing a human connection that starts with trust and starts with caring and humility first. The second is lead with an attitude of curiosity. So you could ask the coaching kata questions from a place not of curiosity. We were actually challenged to say, what would be sort of a bad outcome from a coaching cycle. But how can you ask questions from a place of humble, open inquiry, where you're not expecting an answer, you're not leading towards an answer, you're open to that person's ideas and their next step in their learning. It's not just the outcome, it's the learning process. And leading with courage. Courage to know that we shouldn't be the expert and have all the answers. Courage to hold up the mirror to someone's actions and help them see their blind spots. Courage to set a challenge that feels really uncomfortable. So how do we lead with caring, curiosity, and courage? And when we do that, we help develop in our people and in our organizations capability, confidence, clarity, and creativity. Because we need to not only get clarity on what is the real problem we're solving, but we also need to be expansive in our thinking about how might we, what could we do, what next step could we take, how can we try, how can we learn. So lead with caring, curiosity, courage, and develop and amplify capability, confidence, clarity, and creativity. There was a comment that Mr. Yoshino made describing some of his early experiences at Toyota. And I love this saying. It's one I've adopted about how we are all connected in this chain of learning. And this is the tradition at Toyota. If we can have this attitude towards learning, that we are connected with people both as learners and as leaders, and it's not just a one-way direction from boss to direct report, but it's like a mesh, a chain of mesh, where we are all here connected in our learning journey together. And this is where we strengthen our bonds and strengthen and accelerate what we can achieve and the impact that we can have. This is how we amplify our impact. I like to say 1 + 1 equals much more than 2. The sum of our parts individually is not as big as when we put ourselves together, when we create this chain of learning in our organizations, in our families. All of this applies at home, in our personal lives, as well as in our professional lives as well. So I have some cards on the table for you, and I have 2 questions for you. First, please leave these on the table. So what is one thing that you're going to practice to become a better or more effective KATAlyst for learning? And put that on the card. And make a note for yourself as well. And then, one word describes your learning experience here this morning? And if you leave the cards on the table, I'm going to be doing a drawing for 3 lucky people to win a signed copy of Learning to Lead, Leading to Learn. We'll be announcing that after lunch here today, and you can get your book later, and a mini Daruma. And I forgot to mention these Daruma dolls. That's me with a giant Daruma in Japan. And these dolls represent the patience and perseverance we need to have to achieve goals and become the people that we want to be. So when you have a goal, you fill in the doll's left eye. And it's like a weeble wobble. Can't do it too well on my hand, but it always will write itself up. It represents the Japanese proverb, fall down 7 times, get up 8. And that is the whole point of these learning cycles. We are going to fall down. We are going to make mistakes. But how do we keep getting up and eventually achieve our goal? And even if we don't achieve our goal, what did we learn? because that into itself is more important than the outcome as well. So thank you here. I'll also be signing books and have some others available for sale later today, immediately following the last part of the program. So really looking forward to seeing all of you later today in the question and answer session, as well as tomorrow during the workshop as well. So thank you all, and please answer my 2 questions and leave that card for a chance to win some books and Darumas. So thank you.
Super.